Welcome to Camp Grace game show, Who Has Godly Character? I'm Robin Loudman. Welcome to our show. Now, as you know, the object of this game is picking the one contestant who shows godly character. Let's get right to it. Contestant number one. Contestant number one, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
First scenario. Contestant number one, are you ready?
Yes.
Let's say your camp counselor asks you to hike to the top of Mount Whack-A-Mole to bring back a group of campers who are camped there overnight. It's a long hike and a very hot day. What would you say to your camp counselor?
I would say no, because it's his job. I'm not supposed to do something. I'm not supposed to do something like that. I get really irritable when it's hot. When I get hot, you see, I wear things like this. When I get hot, I get irritable, all right? So I would not do something like that because I would be going out of my comfort zone.
Thank you, contestant number one. Contestant number two. Same scenario. Your camp counselor asked you to hike up to the top of Mount Whack-A-Mole. Would you do it?
Well, I like to try to remember that my counselor has great authority over me, and I would respect him, and I would do whatever he tells me to do.
Very nice. Very nice. Moving on. Remember, audience, you will pick the one with the godly character at the end of the show. All right. Contestant number one. Your camp counselor has another errand for you.
It sounds like my camp counselor wants me to do his job.
All right. Here's the errand, contestant number one.
Yes.
Your camp counselor asked you to go into our camp botanical garden and pick the perfect flowers for your cabin to give Miss B for her birthday. What would you do?
I would say no, because I do not like bees. I hate bees, and I would get a mild allergies if I went around the flowers. He can do it himself because it's very easy. He needs to get off of his lazy bum and do it himself.
Okay, and contestant number two, what is your answer?
Of course, again, I would respect my counselor and do as they ask. I would love to pick flowers for Miss B.
Oh, please, oh.
Okay, contestant number one. The camp director asks you to think of the one person in your cabin who should be selected to share what they've learned about God at Camp Grace with the parents at the annual Camp Grace Parents Breakfast.
Well, of course I would pick myself, because I am obviously the most experienced and best person to talk about God's grace and what I've learned along this spiritual journey.
Okay, and contestant number two, would you also speak at the annual Camp Grace Parents Breakfast?
Well, the first thing I would do in this situation is pray, and I would ask God to help me know who the person I should pick to speak for the parents' breakfast.
Audience, this will be our final question. I hope you've paid close attention to the answers. Listen carefully. Contestant one, you are fishing at Lake Swim or Drown. Suddenly, a camp counselor comes from the woods and tells you that he and his cabin had been on a hike. One of the campers forgot to pick up the lunch Miss B had prepared for them. He tells you that he is very hungry and asks you if you have any food to share. What would you do?
Well, if I'm out fishing, I obviously have food of my own, and I'm obviously going to get hungry. Like I mentioned before, I was hot, therefore I would need food to be less irritable. So I would keep it for myself and tell him to go away.
Okay, well, contestant number two, what about you? Would you share your lunch?
I would definitely share my lunch, and maybe even suggest we have a fire and cook up some of the fish I have for extra food.
Oh, baloney.
Okay, audience, it's that time in our show when we choose the contestant with godly character. We'll make the selection by applause. Audience, after hearing all of the responses to the scenarios, applaud if you believe contestant 2 has godly character. All right now, I am blind. Number 1, does she have godly character? All right, just to make sure and verify your results, let's go one more time. Contestant number 2. And one more. Time for contestant number 1. Okay. It seems by overwhelming response you have selected contestant number 2. Good job. Congratulations. Congratulations.
will go check on contestant number 1.
Wow, that was some game show. You were a great audience. You know, since we are created in God's image, He wants us to have godly character. You did a great job knowing what that looked like once you saw it up here. When you go back to your cabins, you are going to look at a Bible story that is about having godly character. It's a great story, and I know you will enjoy reading it. I hope when you go back to your small group that you will learn more about what godly characteristics are and how you can have them too. Thanks for playing our game. Time to go back to your cabins. Of Mountain. What's wrong? I can't say.
Easy. He should get off of his lazy bum